Saladin was the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty. He was also the first sultan of Egypt and Syria, and the man who united the Muslim world against the European crusading forces. He is considered one of Islam's greatest heroes, noted for his leadership and military prowess. He is also respected for his chivalrous and sometimes merciful nature during the war against the Crusaders. Saladin was the son of a high-ranking Kurdish officer who had served in the military of Nur al-Din, the ruler of a Syrian province then under the control of the Seljuk Empire. Born in 1138 in Tikrit, Iraq, Saladin was Arabic culturally, linguistically, and religiously. Originally, Saladin was given the name Yusuf ibn Ayyub. Later, he took the name Salah al-Din, which was westernized to Saladin, meaning the righteousness of faith. There are not many accounts of Saladin's childhood and youth. He seems to have been well educated as a young man, although he was more of a scholar than a warrior. After growing up in the city of Damascus and rising through the military ranks, young Saladin joined an army commanded by his uncle and took part in a military expedition in Egypt to prevent Crusader control of land. It was there that Saladin saw his first battles. Saladin's uncle died 2 months later. In March 1169, Saladin, age 31, was chosen to succeed him in command of Nur al-Din's forces in Egypt. He was also appointed vizier of the Fatimid Caliphate, which ruled Egypt at the time. Upon the death of the last Fatimid Caliph in 1171, Saladin became governor of Egypt and started to reduce the power and influence of Shiite Islam by re-establishing a Sunni regime. For the next 18 years, Saladin secured his total authority over Egypt. As time passed, his two main rivals, King Amalric of Jerusalem and his former suzerain, Nur al-Din, died. Saladin invaded and conquered Syria in 1174 and was proclaimed Sultan of Egypt and Syria. This title would be bestowed on him for the rest of his life, also founding a new Islamic dynasty that would rule most of Western Asia for the next century. But not all went well during Saladin's rise. He fostered the enmity of many Muslim leaders, and there were even plots against his life. On May 11, 1175, 13 assassins managed to infiltrate Saladin's camp. The invaders were part of the dreaded Order of Assassins, an Ishmaelite sect of Shiites who lived in the mountains of Persia and Syria. But the invaders were promptly discovered. One of them was killed by one of Saladin's generals. The others were put to death while trying to escape. The following year, there was another assassination attempt. Saladin survived thanks to his armor, which protected him from a dagger aimed at his heart. Initially, Saladin responded to these attacks by besieging the city of Masyaf, where he believed the assassin's hideout to be. Later, Saladin sought to form an alliance with Rashid Sinan, the leader of the assassins, also known as the Old Man of the Mountain. Saladin and Sinan considered the expulsion of the Crusaders a mutual benefit. Therefore, they maintained cooperative military relations. From the year 1174, King Baldwin IV ruled Jerusalem. Despite suffering through his life a terrible leprosy infection, he was considered an effective leader. Saladin and Baldwin faced each other at the Battle of Montesgard, where Baldwin, at the age of only 16, won a surprising victory. The truce was maintained between the two leaders for some time since then, but the brave King Baldwin IV succumbed to illness. After his death in 1185, the throne of Jerusalem passed to his sister Sibylla, who in turn crowned her husband Guy of Lusignan as king. In 1186, the treacherous knight Renaud of Chatillon, an ally of the Knights Templar in the service of Guy and Sibylla, decided to attack a large Muslim caravan traveling through the desert, when the truce with Saladin was still in effect. For Saladin, this provocation was unforgivable, and the war against the Crusaders resumed. Saladin prepared to launch a full-scale attack in 1187, gathering troops from his entire kingdom south of Damascus and an impressive Egyptian fleet at Alexandria. The dispute was decided at the famous Battle of Hattin. The Crusader army was largely annihilated by Saladin's motivated troops. It was a huge disaster for the Crusaders and a turning point in the history of the Crusades. Saladin captured Renaud of Hattin, the causer of that new wave of violence. According to historical records, Saladin personally executed Reynald de Chatillon. Gaius Lucian was also captured, but his life was spared. On October 2, 1187, the city of Jerusalem surrendered to Saladin's army after 88 years of Christian control. Although Saladin had planned to kill all the Christians in Jerusalem as revenge for the massacre of Muslims in 1099, he agreed to let them buy their freedom. After Saladin captured Jerusalem, Pope Gregory III called for a new crusade to recapture the city. In 1189, Christian forces mobilized in the city of Tyre to begin the Third Crusade, led by 3 European kings: Frederick Barbarossa, the German king and emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, King Philip II of France, and Richard the Lionheart of England. 3 years of battles and sieges followed, led mainly by King Richard the Lionheart. Richard's forces faced Saladin at the Battle of Arsuf in 1181 and at the Battle of Jaffa in 1192. The rivalry and mutual respect between Saladin and Richard became legendary. Both were celebrated in poems and courtly tales. When Richard was wounded in battle, Saladin offered the services of his personal physician to help him. At Arsuf, when Richard lost his battle horse, Saladin sent him 2 Arabian thoroughbred stallions as replacements. Saladin also sent him fresh fruit and snow to keep his drinks cold. For his part, Richard suggested to Saladin the marriage between the Englishman's sister and the Arab's brother, and Jerusalem would be the wedding gift. The two reached an agreement about Jerusalem in the Treaty of Ramla in 1192. The city would remain under Muslim control, but would be open to pilgrimages by unarmed Christians. However, the several years of battles and constant pressure of having to lead the holy war against the Crusaders began to affect Saladin's health. By early 1193, he was suffering from severe fatigue. Fever and illness caused him to be under constant attention from doctors. A few months later, in March 1193, Saladin died peacefully in bed in his royal palace in Damascus. Saladin passed away relatively young, around the age of 56. At the time of his death, he had donated much of his personal wealth to subjects and charities, leaving in the royal treasury an insufficient amount to pay for his funeral. The coalition of Muslim states assembled by Saladin broke up after his death, but his descendants in the Ayyubid dynasty continued to rule Egypt and Syria for several generations.